Thank you for that warm welcome. Just one quick conference speaking tip. Never speak right after Sarah Drasner because you'll never be as funny or as polished as her presentations. So that's rule number one of conference presentations. Other than that, I'm John Lindquist, that big ugly guy up on the screen over there. That's me. I am a founder of egghead.io. Any Egghead subscribers out there? All right, sweet. All right, thank you for your support and for your love. If you're not an Egghead subscriber yet, I'm not going to peer pressure you or guilt trip you into a subscription, but all the cool kids are doing it, and my kids are hungry, so yeah. My presentation is on VueRx, and that has to do with combining Vue with the RxJS streaming library. Now, RxJS isn't easy, but that's okay because I'm not smart. In fact, I think I'm dumb enough just to get these concepts across to people who are new to RxJS and to help them understand how it all works together. Now, one of my favorite books is called Badass: Making Users Awesome by Kathy Sierra. This is actually a book we send to all of our new instructors at Egghead. As soon as they come on, we send out a mic kit and we send this book with them, and we ask them to read it because it's a fantastic book. You can find it on Amazon or wherever. And a concept she talks about in there is the concept of perceptual exposure, which means that one of the best ways of learning is through experience, by experiencing someone else do the thing. So if you want to learn how to fly a plane, that you sit in the cockpit with the pilot, you watch what the pilot does, how she acts or reacts to certain situations, and you take in the cause and effect of their decisions. Now, your brain is this magical thing which can easily detect patterns. So when you're watching that pilot make those decisions, you're picking up on things and learning those patterns, but you don't even know that you're learning it. It's just coming to you as an intuition. And I think you can even make the argument that the idea of imposter syndrome can come from you feeling like you don't know why you know everything you know. You spent so many years watching other people code and writing your own code and trial and error and all these things that you don't know why you know all of it because you didn't go to school for it, you don't feel validated. But let me assure you, you are perfectly capable and competent programmers, and you're all wonderful at your jobs. So, as are your coworkers. All right, so I'm going to dive right into the experience of this. You can see on the screen here that for my slides, I'll use quotes there, slides, I was already using RxJS to make this happen because I was listening on the window for key down events and then plucking the key property off of them. Then if the key was the left arrow or the right arrow, I created two streams off of those. Now, if you hit left, I mapped that to -1 to push it to the left, or if you hit right, I mapped it to +1 to push it to the right. And then I throttled the time. You can see if I hold down the left key, it's going at a certain pace instead of just zooming through. Hold down the right key instead of zooming through. I started with 0, and then I kept track of it by adding that I to the direction, and that gave me a streaming index of the events mapped to those numbers. And then my slides were simply combining the slides with that index and then pulling off that slide off of the array of slides, the observable that provided that array of slides. Now that is a lot to take in, but let's dive more into the experience of doing it. Rather than spending so much time on the language, there's a lot of language and you need a glossary to figure out RxJS, the experience of seeing how things stream can really help you understand what's going on. So I'm going to switch over to my little demo here. Whoops. All right, so everyone's favorite activity is hitting the snooze button. So scenario number one, this is the snooze scenario. Now, you can think of how you'd solve this in your current Vue projects or however you're writing your code these days, where a timer comes down, the buttons activate when the timer is done. You can click a button to start that timer again, or once that's done, you can hit a dismiss to end everything and deactivate everything. No more timers, no more button handlers, it's all kind of gone. So I'm going to show this by switching over to my snooze start. My little F there, if you can even see it, it's at the bottom of the screen. I'm just switching branches here. So all I have here is a template with some 2 buttons, some title text, and no code at all, just some basic styles. So what I'll start with is a script tag, and then I will export. Whoops. I will export, not next port, but I will export. This is like a hard standing, I'm too tall for this table. Export, default. And then I also need to import, let's see, from RxJS. I need to import what's called observable. And then since I've already installed and configured the VueRx library, this is going to add something called subscriptions. So I'll bring that in, subscriptions. And this may look familiar because it's very similar to the data object. You create a data function, and then you return an object. So from here, I can create streams and then return streams to my template. So I'm going to create an observable interval of 1 second. I'm going to call this my count downstream, and then return that and show it up in my H1 here. So if I missed, count downstream. All right. So what that's going to do right now is push values in every 1 second. So you can always be thinking, I'm streaming, so that means I'm pushing values in. All right, but I don't want it to go up, I want it to go down. So the way you'd make it go down is by telling it to, the same way you'd use reduce an accumulator, I'm going to take the time and tell the time to subtract 1 instead of adding 1. So now it'll go negative. Wonderful. We actually want this to start with the number 5. So it's going to start at 5 and then work its way down. And then because it's a timer or an alarm system, we want to take while time is greater than 0. All right. So this is going to go ahead and stop. Let me hit save there. This is going to start at 5 and go down to 1 and then stop before it gets to 0 because 0 is not greater than 0 unless the new math says otherwise. I don't know. All right, so I sped it up a bit because you don't want to watch 5 seconds of that every single time. But because we're pushing values out those 5 times through the stream, it's streaming down, pushing a value down, down, down. When we hit this part and we hit the take while, now we're complete. It is done, and you can kind of move on to the next step. So what I can do is concatenate another observable onto it. So I can say observable of, and this will be my alarm, wake up. And then how about a party emoji? All right, so 1, then wake up. So now we have 2 buttons that do nothing, but if I refresh, that'll trigger, the observable will start, and now let's hook up some buttons. Now the buttons use a system called, or a property on here called DOM streams. So DOM streams, if I can tell you this is a weird angle to type at. And I'm going to call this first DOM stream a snooze stream, and then come up into here and say vstream click and snooze. All right, so instead of that @ sign, we're writing vstream as the directive in there to say that this is going to stream values in and I can push values in. So right now with my stream as it is, I can say repeat. I can say just repeat here and save. And this will trigger that and tell it to keep on going back to the beginning, back to the beginning, back to the beginning. But I can also say repeat when and return an observable from this. So I can say repeat when this dot snooze. So now it gets to wake up, and when I click on snooze, it repeats. Snooze, it repeats. All right. So at this point, it is essentially handed over the stream to this other stream. So we're connecting the pieces here. We're letting the values flow down through the stream. So I want the dismiss button, which is currently doing nothing, to cancel it, to tell it to end. So we'll say do this until I hit the dismiss button. So we'll set that up as well. So dismiss, you'll set up a DOM stream for every button that you're gonna, or every value you're gonna stream in. So vStream, click, and let's call it dismiss. So this matches this, so we'll go ahead and say take until this dot dismiss. All right, so I can hit snooze, and I can hit dismiss, and now snooze, the button doesn't work anymore. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I'm clicking as loud as I possibly can on a trackpad. So now we've actually hit, once we hit dismiss, this is complete, and we can kind of move on to the next step after that, and we can concatenate more things onto it. So I can say concat observable of have a nice, or have a great, have a wonderful day. And how about a huggy face? That's one of my favorites. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, wake up and dismiss. Have a wonderful day. The buttons don't work anymore because you are awake. Now one thing to note here, there are some gotchas with streams you always have to be aware of, because it's time-based, the things are happening over time, and you're kind of making a stream that represents the future. If I just start smashing the snooze button here, you're telling it to repeat every single time you click on that. And that's not what we want, because it's kind of triggering that stream over again. Instead of sharing that first stream, you're triggering it over and over again. So we can say share. This way it'll always share that first one, and I can smash on that button, but it's not going to do anything until I've reached that state where it's in wake up. Similarly with dismiss, I can try and hit dismiss as much as possible, but that doesn't work until I hit wake up. All right, so from here, we've created this entire countdown stream which walks step by step down. You start with 5, you subtract a value, you go until 0, you say wake up, you make sure you're sharing that same stream, you repeat when you click or end when you dismiss, and then you concatenate the message that you want to send at the end. But there's also a lot of UI things you'd like to do with this, and one of them is disabling the buttons if we can't click on them. Why have them up there if they're not going to do anything? And I'm going to make another stream in here called disable, and this is going to be the countdown stream. I'm going to map to the value that comes through here, because countdown is pushing out those values, the ones and the messages and all that sort of stuff. And if the value is not equal to wake up, so I'll just copy that, we'll copy and paste. It's just like I'm working with Stack Overflow. So now I have a disable stream that's going to be true as long as it doesn't say wake up. So I can hand back this disable and then pass in disable to my buttons. So I'll come up here, say disabled, and disable my buttons. So you'll see they disable almost right away. So it's like it's almost working perfectly. And that's another little thing where this stream starts with, it starts right away, and this subscribes after that initial value has already been pushed out. So another thing you need to be aware of is if something's firing before you get a chance to hook into it, you can do things like share replay, and that'll make sure that anybody who hooks into that stream later on gets those values that you may have missed. So when I hit snooze now, it disables right away. Hit snooze now, disables right away. Hit dismiss, it's done, the buttons are gone, and the whole thing's shut down, everything's complete. So you can kind of think of how you'd solve this in other ways with reactive properties, the way you'd have to set properties, set state, keeping track of state, and all those things. And you can compare it to this idea of streaming down, passing values down. What does it change to? How am I going to handle it? How am I going to repeat? What am I going to add to it at certain states? And you can see the benefit of working with something, working with streams in this way. Next, I'd like to switch over to the if at first you don't succeed example. Let's go ahead and click the load button, make sure my server's running. So I'll click load, and I will load the Yoda. So there's Yoda and his pretty little face. Now, what happens if your server goes down or you go offline? So how come that's not focusing? Focus and go down. All right, I will press a button then. All right, so the server should be down now, and if I refresh and hit load, I'm going to pop up this modal saying, would you like to retry? And I can smash on retry, and it's retrying, and you can see those errors popping up in the log down there. So I can bring my server back up, and this time when I hit retry, it loads the Yoda. All right, so this is going to be our, let's see, retry start. This is going to be the if at first you don't succeed scenario. And you can think of how you would do this if you were to try and achieve the same thing through your own, through the whatever patterns you use now. All right, so first we have the load button, and we kind of talked about that already, is that we create DOM streams where you can stream the values in. So let's hook up that load button. So v stream and click, and we called that load. And in case you're wondering, the $sign is just a convention. Someone decided that streams should have $, in their name, but you do not have to do that. So I'm going to say load, and when that load event pushes through, I'm going to switch over to a different observable. So you click load, and I'm going to switch over to something else. Now the cool thing is you can switch over to, I'm going to switch over to an observable AJAX call. And what I'm going to request is something from the server. So I'll say http://localhost 3000, and Yoda is people/0. And then off that AJAX call, we just want to pluck the response. All right. So right now, this is a stream set up that nobody's using yet, that if I click that button, then it'll give me back the Yoda data object. So I'm going to go ahead and call this person and return person. And now when I put this in the template will subscribe to this value. So let's just go ahead and put let's put it here, person. All right, so I'm going to click load is not defined. Where did I mistype something? Let me, my first, yeah, this, thank you. You win an extra beignet, whoever said that. It's on me. Whoa. All right, so I'm going to click the load button, and you can see the data comes in. It's going to render out that object as JSON and just display it in the page. And that's because that event pushes into the switch map. It says, hey, what do you want to do? I could have passed in the event here and done something with that by sending it to the AJAX call. But right now, I don't want to do anything with the event. I just want to switch over. And then we loaded Yoda. So from there, let's have the service fail. Or let's actually display Yoda real quick. So I'm going to say const name is person pluck name. You can kind of see the properties over here that you could grab off this. Say const image is going to be person pluck image, and then we'll map this to its image that's on the server. So we'll map this to HTTP : / and then localhost 3000 and the image. And then we can also do some alt text. So person, actually, let's do name, and then map the name to, let's say, image of, yeah, that'll be fine, image of name. All right, so we have these 3 streams, and one of the gotchas here is that if you hook 3 streams up to person, they'll call that AJAX call 3 times. So kind of like the other scenario, we want to make sure that we share that and only reuse that one initial stream. And then we'll go ahead and return the name and the image, and the alt. And then we can go ahead and put in the put in the name. We can delete that. Put in the image, and put in the alt. All right, so now clicking a button just loads that data and pushes it into the template using this tiny bit of code here where we load, push the event into the AJAX call, and then grab some other streams off of that first stream, a name, an image, and small text. Now, here's where the nuclear explosion goes off and your server goes down, and of course that's the greatest of your worries at that time, is how am I going to load Yoda during this nuclear fallout? So I'll hit refresh and click load, and all you see is an uncaught error exception in the console. Oh no, what am I going to do? You can just say, well, just catch that error. And instead of just leaving the error uncaught, I'm going to push through a different value. I'm going to say observe table of error. So now off of that person stream, I'm going to create an error stream. I'm going to say error, and this will be off of the person stream. And I'm going to say if I get a value of error from that stream, then push out an error. So I'm just going to value this if value is not quadruple equals, that's 2 equal. All right. So error and error. So this is just a true or false value coming through based on whether or not we get the text of error. Now I can use that in my template, and I have the Vueify component library available to me. So I'm just going to use a modal from that. So I'll say active error. Is the person who wrote Vueify here? No? Thank you. If you're listening or watching this later, it's awesome. Vueify or Vueify? Vueify. Vueify is the one I'm using. Vuetify is also awesome, as are all things that rhyme with Vue. All right, so inside of this modal, I will create a title and say, you appear offline. All right, so now I'll click. It'll fire up that modal. That is some very dark text. It has some helpers in here. I'll say has text white, I think is the class name. There you go. So you appear offline. So we caught the error. We triggered an error stream, and that fired the modal to launch. So now we can say button, well, who has a button? We'll retry this and set up a retry DOM stream, retry, and set up the vStream click. I'm not worried about that right now. Retry. All right. So now to retry, I'm just going to say the person isn't just this.load. It can be either load or retry. So I'll say observable merge this load or this dot retry. If you're ever thinking or, you think observable merge, that'll push either of those values through. So either of those events will be handled by those button clicks. So now I can click load. Let me clear out the console. I can hit retry, and you'll see it's still pushing errors through that I'm handling. That error dialog is staying open. And then I can npm start. And now when I click the button, we have our wonderful Yoda back. All right. So another good thing to know about this is you can, instead of catching and retrying manually with buttons and with other user interactions, you can retry programmatically. If you use retry, this is just going to continuously call retry as fast as it possibly can, so we're not going to use that one. We're going to use retry when and say error.delay 1 second. All right, so we'll tear the server down, and I'll hit load, and you'll see it'll fire off every second. It's trying to make that request again. It's like, come on, you there yet? Are you there yet? Are you there yet? And then as soon as I bring the server back up, you can see it loaded Yoda into the page. All right. And all of that is by just merging together these two buttons. The two events push through. They switch over to an AJAX call, get the response. If it fails, we tell it, you know what, retry or handle it manually. And it's just some basic properties off of that person stream. All right, time check. So let's switch over to the last scenario here that I'd like to show off. And this is the syncing UI with content scenario where if I have tabs or whatever you want to call it, this is a tabs component. When I click on that, it loads in the person that I clicked on, so just based on ID. So if I switch over to my tabs start, I just have an empty template here, just tabs controller, a container, whatever you want to call it, and an H1, an image tag already set up. And I have some data that has an active tab that has a V model coming from that tab. So whatever tab, if it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, it'll be that index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 bound to it. So the first thing I want to do is populate those tabs. How am I going to get data from my server into the tabs and show all the people I want to show? And the way I can do that is pretty simply create a people stream and say observable AJAX and then HTTP localhost 3000 and the people, pluck the response, and then return the people. Now those people can be put directly into the template. So if I just drop it right here, you'll see a giant array of people show up right away because I didn't hook this up to a button telling it to load. I just said, you know what, in the template, subscribe to this, push the values directly into the template right away. So instead of just having raw data displayed on the page, instead let's go into our tab items and say v4, and I'm going to say person of my people stream. I can key this to person.id, and then I can label this as person.name. hit save there, and now we have that data being pushed into, and we have 180 Star Wars characters available to us to click on. Now, because we're not going to use click events, they're not buttons, we're going to be working off of a model provided us by the component. Instead of setting up our own DOM stream this time, we're going to watch a property change. And this works very similarly to how the Vue watch works. It hooks into that same API. I'm going to say watch as observable. This is something that VueRx provides for you. And I'm going to say watch that active tab. And I'll call this the active tab stream and return active tab. Then drop active tab up in here. And active tab stream. All right, and you'll notice it doesn't show up immediately. It doesn't show up right away. But when I click, it'll show the old value and the new value. When I click again, old value, new value. And it'll show me how that active tab is changing. Now, because it doesn't show up immediately, there is a configuration option. And you'll never guess what it's called to make something show immediately. It's called immediate. And so now when I refresh, it pushes out that new value of 0. So I want to pluck the new value off of this. So new value. And now that's 0. And when I go through here and click and click and I can click all the way down here, it's returning the active tab, the number that I'm getting from that. All right. So now I can actually hook into that and load data based on that active tab. So if I say person is active tab and switch map, and I'm going to do that same observable AJAX call, and this is going to call to HTTP localhost 3000 people, and the ID is going to come from up here because the tab is pushing the ID down, so I can push or I can map or concatenate or append the ID into that string for my AJAX call. And I just want to make sure that I pluck the response. And then I will have a person. And my person can be put into here. Hit save. And you'll see that this one was Yoda, this one's Luke, this one's C-3PO, and on and on and on. So let's do the same thing where we can grab these properties off of the person. I know I'm going to do a few streams off of this, so I'm going to share it right away. I'll grab the name, and that can be the person, pluck name. I'll grab an image, and that can be the person, pluck image. And I'm actually going to map this to, because the image is on the server, I'm going to map it to HTTP and localhost 3000 and the image. And then we can grab the alt text as well. So this will be name, map the name to a string of image of name. All right, so these three streams, instead of person, now we're going to have name, we're going to have image, we're going to have alt, and use name, image, and alt inside of our template. Here, name, image, and alt. All right, so now we have everything working together. I'm clicking on these tabs, and it's syncing up the UI with the remote data content. So it's making those requests to the server. You can see each of them being made as I click on them, and loading in the appropriate person. All right, so you can kind of think of how you do that in your own way. You can look at this streaming way of how these values get pushed down from these observables, and you can see how these streams can provide these elegant solutions for these complex asynchronous problems, especially when it comes to, if I wanted to, I could add in the catch and retry behavior in here. I could add in timers in here. I could add in delays. If things failed, I could make it request to other places. There's a lot of great options here. So for each of these demos, if you want to take them home and play with them, if you go to just rxjs.io, I was actually started with RxJS early enough to buy the .io domain before anyone else did. So I don't know if that's bragging rights or just I'm a big nerd. So each of these demos are available at rxjs.io, and you can see the slides, the alarm system, the retry behavior, the tabs, and another couple demos I put in here just for fun that I don't have time to get to is this is a are you still there scenario, one where it detects if the user is still active on the page, it checks for key presses and mouse moves, and does a kind of a fake sign out if it detects that you're not there anymore. And then finally, the demo that most everyone shows when they do an RxJS example is the search and return results. I don't know if this page is, or if I'm online right now, because this is trying to hit a remote server. Anyway, if I was online, that would return Yoda and anyone else whose name started with Yo, and I can cancel that by typing in while the request is going out. I can cancel outgoing requests, and the surrounding text and things change as the values inside of the input change, and it's all built into some streams in here that define those behaviors. So thanks for watching. Hopefully that gave you the RxJS experience, and you're able to see how it can help you out with some complex scenarios that are actually fairly common. If you feel so inclined, come support us at aka.io. If you'd like to instruct, make lessons with us, come talk to me. And other than that, have a wonderful conference.